In today's show, we're looking at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Players to add, players to drop, players to watch. Michael Bolton's to Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball, and Substack joshloyd48.substack.com. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It's a waiver wire. We'll look at the waiver wire. We'll look at players to add. We'll look at players to drop. We're going to look at transaction trends and all that sort of stuff. So, warning.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
All right, we talked about this a lot in the preseason. We talked about it a lot in the early season. We talked about backup centers and guys waiting for opportunities. And there were lots of them. Lots of guys that we could take just in case. Isaiah Jackson, Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Duren, Mark Williams, Nick Richards popped onto the scene, Walker Kessler. And we just had to wait and try to work out where that opportunity would come from. And it's often you look at rotations and you try and figure out where's that chance going to happen. Indiana, we thought Miles Turner would be traded and Isaiah Jackson would step in. Well, he's not. Doesn't look like he will be. And Isaiah Jackson's not even next in line. So that one's a dud. Right? The Okongwu one never made sense to me because Capella wasn't going to be traded and you were just hoping, and he wasn't going to get benched, right? That one didn't make a ton of sense to me, hoping for that breakout. The Mark Williams one was never going to happen, but then we saw a little bit of Nick Richards and we thought, maybe. The two interesting ones were in Utah, which we'll talk about soon, but in Detroit also, because the guys in front there are bad. Well, at least one of them is Marvin Bagley. The other one's Isaiah Stewart, who they're trying to transition to a power forward. So Jalen Duren made sense to sort of pay attention to. Then we saw opening night with Bagley out. Big games from Duren. Went, here we go. It's really good stuff. And then he sort of faded off, and we're getting limited minutes, and the production wasn't there, and they were, for some reason, investing time and development resources into Marvin Bagley. But we've switched. Duren is starting. Common sense has prevailed. If you want to build a future with the guy who can be your future. Now, I don't trust Dwayne Casey for a single second with common sense rotation decisions. I don't. Why should I? Where's the track record in doing that? I also don't believe, though, that he will start Duren for one game and then reverse course and play Bagley either more minutes off the bench every night or restart Marvin Bagley. I think we'll get at least a section at a time here where Duren's the starter. Now, Duren, his block rate's not quite where it was in college. And that happens to a lot of big men. Actually, every big man. Their block numbers drop. How much they drop is important. But I don't think there is any justification to me that you can leave Jalen Duren on the waiver wire. He is the most added player here for a reason. It might not work out, but that's not the point of this. We're not clairvoyants. We don't know the future. I don't know it. You don't know it. Nobody knows it. Right? We don't, but we try and look at probabilities. We try to look at the value of missing this guy. Because if it doesn't hit, if he goes back to the bench and Bagley starts again, we go and grab someone different because something else will pop up in a week's time. But the opportunity cost of missing on Duren is huge because if he sits and plays 28 minutes a night and goes 13 and 12 and averages 2 blocks on 65% shooting, well, that's a top 100 player really easily. And they don't just pop up in week 9 on the waiver wire. So you got to get him. You have to go grab Jalen Duren and then we'll figure it out later. And if Dwayne Casey changes his mind, we move on from it. And you can apply literally everything I just said to the big fella in Utah as well, Walker Kessler. We'll talk about him a bit later on. Jose Alvarado, one of the most added players as well. Now, this one to me, he's been really good. He's been an unbelievable surprise, the Georgia Tech legend. The minutes are way up. I don't see how that's going to continue when we get 65 minutes of action from Herb Jones and Brandon Ingram returning. Alvarado's filling a huge role, some of it which is filled by Jones. I guess you could make an argument that Alvarado might be as valuable as Jones. Maybe he's not quite as big. For now, Jose is playing really well. I don't really see that maintaining rest of season, but for the short term, go ahead. His teammate Larry Nance, Close games, big minutes for Nance, good production. It's a simple recipe. The problem is that we've had so few close games for the Pelicans. We haven't really seen that from Nance. Add him. Be prepared to drop at any point, but add him. Quentin Grimes, one of the most added players. Some of that is schedule-based. I'm not fully there on Grimes as a 12-team league guy. I think he's a solid 14-team league guy. I've been talking about him as a 14-team league guy for a few weeks now. I'm not quite there with him as a must-roster 12-team league player. I've got him projected. Oh, no, I do actually, you know what? In saying that, I do have him projected a little bit better than I thought. I've got him projected around 120, which is in the 12-team zone. But it's around the same mark of a Larry Nance, Royce O'Neal, Bones Highland. It's giving a little bit of upside there to Grimes, but why? I'm trying to see what pushes him to that level. It's really steals. Steals is what's inflating Grimes' value. He's fine. Absolutely guaranteed 14-team league guy. He's available still in a lot of spots. I don't hate it. I'm just not sure there's much upside in Quentin Grimes. I don't think there's he's going to blow up and become this top 70 player, top 90 player. I don't see how that upside occurs. I can see downside, but I can't see huge upside. Najee Marshall's one of the most added players, another Pelican. This is Sunday-based. It's Ingram and Jones injury-based. Marshall's been crushing it. He's playing really well. There's no way I don't see how this continues. Absolutely no chance at all. So streaming for Sunday, and that's it. I think Grayson Allen is probably getting a little bit underrated, even by myself. He is, the 120th ranked player this season. He's providing unbelievable shooting numbers. He's hitting threes. His minutes, I thought there'd be a risk that him and Carter would split minutes, and it hasn't been the case. Carter's just gone back to a small role, and Allen's sticking. I think he probably is a 12-team league guy. Bogdanovic, one of the highest added players. Well, we thought he'd have a minutes limit for weeks, and then 2 games in, they lied to us again. 23 minutes. And then he plays 33. All right, you can't do much when people lie with information like that. If you go through and distrust every bit of information you're given, you're going to be wrong. If you go through and believe every part of information you're given, you're going to be wrong. And how do you find which ones are right and which ones are wrong? It's literally impossible. So you just got to cop them on the chin when you hear these things like he'll play 23 minutes and you'll be restricted for that for 3 or 4 games, and you'll go to 26 minutes, and then literally the next game he plays 33. What can you do? Right? If you go out and say, no, they're lying, he'll play 35 straight away, and then he doesn't, then you look like a fool for literally believing something you were told. And that's part of the problem here with Bogdanovic. It is going to be impacted when Collins and Hunter and Murray return. He won't have as free reign to take as many shots. He's a really good player, but it's just not how offensive hierarchies work. But he should be on a roster, and I cannot believe that one of the most added players is DeAnthony Melton. How he was available in that many leagues to become most added is staggering. It's staggering. He shouldn't be available anywhere, so I don't know how he was available to be one of the most added players over the last 48 hours. It's pretty straightforward. DeAnthony Melton is a must-roster player. Today's episode is brought to you by the blokes at Rocket Money. Rocket Money, you might have heard of it, used to be called Truebill, and sometimes we know how hard it can be to keep track of our finances and our spending, especially subscriptions, and cancelling them or forgetting to cancel them. It can be a real pain, and it can be very, very costly. You got to cancel something, you go in, cancel subscription. Where's the button? Bloody, you can't find it. Then you go and click it, and it goes, are you sure you want to cancel? Click, yes, I didn't misclick it. Are you really, really sure? Yes, I am really, really sure. And then you go, I give up. Right? Rocket Money goes in there and does all that stuff for you, all that hassle, and finds subscriptions you didn't even know that you had and cancels them for you as well. That's going to save you hundreds of dollars a year. So cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Let's go to the most dropped players in fantasy. Majority of these I agree with. This is a perfect example of we talked about with Jalen Duren. You see something happening and you get on it. We saw Daniel Gafford play 22 minutes a night, 21 minutes a night, play alongside Kristaps Porzingis. We go, all right, here we go. Right, all he needs is 21 minutes, get a 4 or 5 minute crossover with Porzingis, and that's a 12-team league guy. And have him for 3 games straight, bang, let's go, we're on. Because he'd been playing 6 minutes a night, and they'd been playing small with Kuzma at center. We got bang, all right, it's on, it's happening. Let's grab it and see what happens. And now it's stopped. All right, it's stopped. The crossover isn't happening anymore. They are going to get Rui Hachimura back at some point, which might impact him. And we took the chance. We tried to get some value out of it. You might have got 1 or 2 games out of it. The value's gone. See you later. Simple. That's how fantasy works. AJ Griffin. I don't think I would have been quite that quick to drop Griffin with Murray, Hunter, Collins still out. Now, the last game was really bad for him. He shot poorly in 3 straight games as well, and his minutes were well down. Just the fact that I think he's going to continue to start for another week, and I don't think he'll be a 23% shooter in that week, it does give me pause in dropping him. I'd probably be more inclined to hold him, especially over a lot of the names on this list. Although there are some here that I don't think I'd drop. Jalen Noel, I think, is a pretty clear drop. We saw him in that first game step up, but that was a game that Jordan McLaughlin didn't even play. And now we are really seeing the replacement for Karl Anthony Towns be Kyle Anderson with like 38 minutes. So Noel is struggling. He will have hot and cold streaks. There's no reason for him to clog up a 12-team roster spot. Cameron Payne, Chris Paul's back. See you later, campaign. Easy. People dropped Alex Caruso. He got hurt yesterday. He had a back contusion. It's not considered to be serious, I don't think. Yes, the great value of Caruso was the Saturday-Sunday back-to-back here, but as a starting point guard, he might get you 5 assists, 1.8 steals. He might only get 8 points, but there's enough for him to be a long-term guy. I probably would have held it out one day as the Bulls starting point guard, just to see if he's back for the next game and have value there. I don't think the only reason he should have been added was this back-to-back. I would not have dropped Andrew Nembhard. He's still starting and playing 31 minutes. Yes, the numbers are well down with Halliburton back. That's to be expected. But he can still provide assists and some steals with solid percentages and hit some threes. I wouldn't have been that quick to drop him. Tim Hardaway, he stunk. He was so bad the last 2 games. And we know that this is going to happen. I don't have that much of a problem with dropping Hardaway. We know who Tim Hardaway is. He gets hot, you add him. He gets cold, you drop him. But as long as he's starting and playing 30 minutes, which he didn't last game, 28 minutes a night, probably not enough for Tim. If he's getting 30, 31, it probably is. I don't mind dropping him. This one, the last one on this list, Denny Avdia. Why are people dropping Denny Avdia? This makes no sense at all. We have seen time and time again, when Beal is out, Avdia puts up good numbers. And unless I'm missing something, Bradley Beal is still out. Now, Bradley Beal might come back during the week, but you know who's not back? Bradley Beal. Monte Morris is also still out. And Rui Hachimura is still out. And Dylan Wright is still out. And Avdia's playing 35 minutes. What are we doing? This one makes 0 sense to me. Avdia's been great. He will continue to be pretty good. And then when Beal comes back, then jettison him. No problem. I don't know why he would have been one of the most... okay, some people might have dropped him. One of the most dropped players? That doesn't really add up to me. Unless there's something I'm just completely overlooking here, I don't get it. These are guys who are rostered in lots of leagues, over 50%, and I don't think they need to be. Droppable players. Brandon Clark. He's a backup center behind Steven Adams. Adams did hurt his ankle last game, so I get that there might be some increased value here for Clark, but as a long-term prospect, no, I don't see it. I think we've got to do it with sticks.
Stand by your man!
Nah, I'm not going to stand by him anymore. It's just too much inconsistency. It was always so weird. When at Summer League, they came out and said, yeah, Jalen Smith's our starting power forward. And I go, have you guys seen him play? Like, he's not that good. Why are you anointing him the starting power forward now? Was this part of the deal, much like JaVale McGee is the starting center for the Mavericks? Oh, Jalen, we really need you to come back, and we promise you be the starter. And I guess he didn't get it in writing that starter means playing over 20 minutes a night. In theory, he's got a good fantasy game. Points and threes and blocks and boards and good percentages. The problem is, in reality, he's a terrible player. Drop him. John Wall. Saw him start last game. A lot of people love John Wall. I get it. Name value is great. Do you think John Wall will be a starter later in the season? There's questions I get. And I don't know. I don't expect it. But even if he does, I'm not sure I care. I'm not sure it actually changes that much. His percentages are bad. He gets some assists. He's low volume threes. His rebounds are nothing. He's really just an assist streamer. And I don't think that playing next to Kawhi and Paul George, by the way, Kawhi landed top 50 over the last week. I don't think that playing next to those guys, he's got an opportunity to do what he needs to do to overcome the bad percentages. I don't think he's a must-hold guy. Same with Mo Bamba. Like, this guy should literally be out of the rotation when Carter's back. No need to hold him. The last 4 are points league guys. You got Clark there and Smith there as well, who Clark very easily a points league drop. Derek White. We're seeing at the moment, even with Horford out, he's struggling a little bit. I think Derek White's going to become a category league drop as well. But in points leagues, he's 130th so far this season. And it's going to get worse when Rob Williams returns. How, Josh? One's a point guard, one's a center. Really easily, gentleman or gentlewoman. Gentlewoman? That sounds so stupid. Gentleman or lady who asked me that question about why Rob Williams will impact Derek White. Because Derek White had been starting. And I tell you who's going to start when he comes back eventually, or at some point, almost straight away, Rob Williams. And the guy who's going to move to the bench will not be Jaylen Brown or Marcus Smart or Jason Tatum or Al Horford. It'll be the fifth starter, who is Derek White. And then when Derek White goes to the bench, it's him and Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench, and he might not play 20 minutes a night. There'll be some nights when someone's hurt, when he steps up, but as a regular, ongoing, every night contributor, the return of Rob Williams, and it's already happening now for Derek, but the return of Rob Williams sounds the end of his 12-team value, in my opinion. I think Colin Sexton's also a drop. Out with a hammy. I would drop him in category leagues as well, Sexo. Out with a hammy. Conley's back. I don't see the point of holding. Injury reserve, put him there. Who cares? That's great. Awesome. Love it. Fantastic. But other than that, no. I don't have Jaden Ivey or Benedict Mathurin on this list as rookies who are droppable players, especially for category leagues. But I think they are. Now, that I didn't put them here because there is very easy arguments to make that we could hit March or February, and both of those guys are rolling at a top 80 rate. They've figured out the percentages. They're contributing in other areas. That's possible. But for some people, they're a drop because you can't afford to wait December, January, February for them to start rolling after the All-Star break. You can't wait that long. And their statistical profile coming out of college wasn't the most exciting anyway. So yeah, that's going to be an individual decision, but I wouldn't look at Mathurin and Ivy as absolute guaranteed must-roster players. I don't think that for a team that's sitting 7th and 6 teams make the playoffs, that you can deal with someone just destroying you on percentages and having low volume counting stats on a night-to-night basis. I don't think anyway. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You go create that job on LinkedIn Jobs. It's really simple to do. Put everything you need in there, and then on your LinkedIn profile, you add the purple hashtag hiring frame, and that lets people know that you are, in fact, hiring. Wow, what a coincidence that is. Simple tools, like the screening questions, help you find the people that you want with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then eventually hire. Really straightforward stuff. It's why small businesses rank or rate. They got rate in this. Either one. They rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's go through the must roster list. I know you're not going to be disappointed to know that Kelly Olynyk is on this list. He's still available in over 20% of leagues, and that's the cutoff I use here. These names are all the same. I'll keep putting them here till they hit 80. I don't know what people... Unless this tells me that 23% of leagues are inactive. It must. All right, Kelly Olynyk, must roster. Josh Hart, must roster. Mitch Robinson, must roster. Killian Hayes, must roster. These guys are all projected by me. And my projections could be wrong. But by me, if I looked at a waiver wire and saw those guys there, I go, what are we doing? Please figure it out, Adam. Olynyk, Hart, Mitch Robinson, Killian Hayes. Category league must rosters. Points leagues, Jaden Ivey. Different to category leagues, points league must roster. Mitchell Robinson, Killian Hayes, and Josh Hart. Same names again. And I would put Olynyk in there, but I'd prioritize these other guys in points leagues ahead of Kelly. Let's look at some hot players. These guys are all top 100 guys. In fact, they're all top 80 players over the last week. So what do we do with them? Flaming Mo Wagner. Yeah, he's a roster rule player. At least until Wendell Carter comes back, have him on 12-team leagues. Tari, regular season. He's a top 100 player. I think he's a top 60 player over the last week. It's only low minutes, but we're in that situation where we're waiting for something to clear up through an Eric Gordon trade, which should have happened 4 years ago. We're waiting for something to clear up, but even while we're waiting, he is still providing value. Now it's going to be up and down. You've got to be in a relatively strong standings position to deal with someone like Tari Eason because there are going to be nights where he has 6 and 3 and you go, what's the point of this? Then there are going to be nights where he has 15 and 7 with 3 steals and a block on 60% shooting. You go, here we go. But we need that minutes upside to come. The good thing is he's giving us this value, and it's worth holding. Walker Kessler. Yeah, he's a top 100 player. He started 2 games off the bench in the others. He's a must-roster player. I don't think that Jared Vanderbilt is... Well, we know that he doesn't have a strong hold on the starting center spot because he got benched this week. And good players, key players, foundational players don't get benched for team balance. They just don't. They're not going to sit Larry Markkinen on the bench and go, actually, Larry, we prefer to have Beasley in there because we just want to be a little bit smaller. Like, they wouldn't do that. But they would for Vanderbilt. Meaning that means good English. But that means that someone like Kessler's got the ability to play 20 a night. And this guy's block rate, it's not as big as it was in college, but it's still gigantic. It's one of the best in the NBA. He is a guy to, much like Jalen Duren, you got to grab him and we'll figure it out later. Nikhil Alexander-Walker's a top 100 player. That one I'm not that interested in, but he did really blow up last game with Sexton, Conley, and Clarkson all out. Don't read into it too much. Jordan Goodwin. I like his value. It was really helped last game that Monte Morris was out, but even with Beal out and Morris back, Goodwin's at least a steal streamer. Not a hated ad. Kyle Anderson, absolutely. What are we doing? Why is he available? Anywhere. He's got to be rostered everywhere. Santi Aldama, top 100. I don't buy that. He's a great stream when Jaren sits, but that's it. Although he is playing good basketball off the bench. And the other guy who's top 100 is Goldfinger, Charlie Bassey. Now, with Pirtle out, I still prefer Zach Collins over Bassey because we saw the minutes. 30 to Collins last game, 28 the game before that. But Bassey gets 18, 20 minutes. Now, Chuck can be pretty good, but I don't think that he is an absolute priority 12-team ad. There are plenty of other guys I would have over him, despite me liking him as a player. These guys are all available in over 90% of leagues for deep leagues, and I think they're worth looking at. Javonte Green and Jeremy Sohan, I think, are 14-team league guys. Yes, Sohan's out, but if you're in a 14-team league, I'd be looking to add these players. And these other bunch of guys in 16-teamers, I think are useful enough. Joshie Richardson, TJ McConnell, the artist formerly known as Torian Prince, who's injured, but I think he's going to have a pretty sizable role when he comes back. Nazareth Reed, 12, 13 minutes for him, 14 minutes for him behind Gobert. He can put up numbers. And in Portland, Drew Eubanks, who's blocking a ton of shots. And that's really useful as the backup center. He's getting those minutes, and Justice Winslow's not anymore. Some other names that are worth talking about. Ayo Dosunmu. As long as Caruso's out, Dosunmu's value rises again. He gets 30 minutes as a starting point guard, and he's worth at least a stream there. Got to talk about Poku. And what I'm going to say is, I have no idea. Is there a pattern to his minutes? No. Is there a pattern to his production? No. Is he a great player? No. Is he a bad player? Also no. Is there anything that's a yes with this guy? Well, the only thing is, should I take a chance on Poku? Like, soft yes. But we are 30% of the way into the season, and we see Poku do this for 3 games, and then play 19 minutes for 3 games, and then start, and then don't start the second half, and I don't really see that changing. That's the consistency. The consistency in Pokuševski is it's going to be inconsistent. So add him, sure. But don't be surprised to drop him in 2 days' time. But the upside is enough to grab. Pat Williams, yeah, maybe. Like, for blocks as a forward-eligible player, yeah, there's some value in him. But I think he's going to go back to the bench when Green is back. Juice McBride, that's a really, really interesting deeper league player.
I am going to drop a deuce on everybody.
Backup point guard, played 20 minutes the last game. Good steals guy, solid assist guy. That's 16 to 20 team league guy. And then the other one in those 20 team leagues is Bryce McGowan's, especially while LaMelo is out. McGowan's is getting 20 a night. And it helps that Dennis Smith is out too, but there's some interesting names. You want to stash someone in like a 14-teamer, Delon Wright? I don't think that he's going to immediately take over Monty Morris, and he might not at all. But there's some stash value there. I wanted to talk about Kemba Walker, who played his first game for the Mavericks yesterday. You don't need to hold him in 12-team leagues. I think that's pretty clear. And I think we're also at that spot with Max Strus. Although, again, the Heat have a favorable schedule coming up, so you can hold him through a favorable schedule. But we are seeing the priority go to Martin, go to Hero, even a little bit going to Oladipo now. And that's the worry we always had with Strus. When he was rolling early season, there was just all these guys out. And when they came back, it was going to be really hard to maintain that. And we're seeing that now. So I don't think he's going to maintain 12-team value, but he remains a good stream option. Guys, that will do it for me today. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. If you are here on YouTube, thumb it up, leave those comments. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.